Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That is Jack. I'm Conrad, and this is the 45. Euros are over. That means the silly season is upon us, and we are here to talk transfer stupid. But except this time, not so stupid. These are the perfect windows. What do we think some of these top clubs and some of the clubs just throughout the Premier League they need to do to really build on what they did last year? And we're going to start off with Tottenham Hotspur.
I think you're talking us up a bit. Are we better than Fabio Paratici and these sides who can make transfer decisions? I think we are, because you know what we have access to that they don't? FBref.com, Football Reference. I'm sure they don't ever check that kind of thing.
No, they don't have any advanced metrics or any kind of statistics.
I check that. So I am clearly a qualified data analytic statistician.
So you got a Nuno picking up over here. We never got a chance to talk about the actual new manager for Spurs. We did a couple conversations around guys that didn't get the job and other guys that we didn't even have time to talk about because they were considered and then discarded almost too fast. 72-day search for a successor to Jose Mourinho. They finally appoint Wolves boss Nuno Espirito Santo, which is something that I said at the tail end of last year after it was announced that he wasn't returning. I was like, Spurs, he'd be perfect for Spurs for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I think what he is he's like a Pochettino, where he did a really good job of developing a side. There's actually disagreement on how well he did at developing Wolves. I think he's done a tremendous job.
7th, 12th.
At developing talent, at actually having quite successful finishes. They were in the Europa League at one point, a quarterfinal finish there. So to take them from championship, yes, there was a lot of investment, but he's proven, give me some money, I will push you further than where you were before.
As long as he gets access to Portuguese players.
Yeah, exactly. He has a few former players, Doherty. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce his name. At right back, he's going to be an interesting one. Doherty. There's a lot of interest. I think for him, I think winning a trophy would be, winning a cup would make him better than the last
anybody who's ever managed at Spurs.
I'm not ever. But, I mean,
from a history perspective or a trophy perspective.
Mm-hmm. But I think he has a really high ceiling. It could go badly, but I don't know. I think the floor is quite high. I feel good about it.
I mean, the good news is that he has managed a team through Europa League qualifiers. The bad news is Spurs are in Europa League qualifiers. Right on the heels of the
Conference League.
Oh, right. The Conference League finals. Yeah, not Europa League. And I'm not sure if it's then they don't have qualifiers.
Nah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Do. Anyhow, he's got experience in the mid-tier in Europe and has done well in there. Yeah. I think it's potentially a distraction for them this year, but we'll talk about that some other time. They do have a handful of players that went deep in Euros that, Kane, Højbjerg, and others, that they're just exhausted, right? And I think part of the problem that he's inheriting is they overperformed their expected goals by 11.5. They were expected to have 54.5. This is a huge spread. Is it the biggest in the league, you said?
Biggest in the league, two more than I believe it's Manchester City, who are in second place. FBref.com. I'll check real quick while you're talking.
Well, this was your part to analyze that overperformance. The problem is that overperformance of 11.5 leads to overperformance in expected points by over 8, which without those expected points driven by those expected goals, you're in 10th place finish, which is not where Spurs want to be.
Yeah. I mean, based on what you created, So it was Manchester United, then Manchester City in second and third versus like they. So there's two ways to look at that. XG, even on a 38 game scale, can sometimes be misleading. It's a really tough stat to use.
To extrapolate.
I have tweet notifications on for XG philosophy, and I love seeing those XG tweets for games, but they're so irrelevant in terms of what the stat does, and that's 38 games, 50 games in a season for a player. You were expected to score how many goals, and you actually scored blank. So you scoring 25 goals, was that a product of you really doing a great job with the few chances you got, or were you in a system that created a lot of chances for you? They did not create a ton of chances.
Well, that's the challenge, right?
But they create
12th in the league. But they converted a lot because you've got clinical finishers, Kane and Son.
Do you want to know who's first and second in overperformance of their goals? It's Heung-min Son and Gareth Bale at plus 6.7 and plus 5.7. Number 1 and number 2 in terms of overperformance.
In the league or in the league?
Entire league. Out of everybody in the league. You have two guys who significantly overperformed. And what we know about XG
why?
Is
because of somebody like Harry Kane, probably?
I think it has a role to play in that, where there's a lot of attention on him. So losing Kane would make this a very different transfer perfect window. But I mean, you look gradually over 76 games as opposed to 38 games, you hit towards that median. So you think about that. You're not going to say Son is going to underperform by 6 goals next season. It's not a mortal lock. But
if they come back to earth,
if he does,
you got a lot of making up to do.
If he was expected to score 10 goals, he scored 17. So next season, if he was to maintain what he was offered in terms of chances, you would expect him to drop off by 7 goals, which is 7 goals in a side that already struggled a bit in scoring. It's a problem that could potentially develop.
On that note, we don't know what's going to happen with Harry Kane yet. He wants out. They're talking about 150 million or 100 million plus players. Don't know. Then you've got an aging Hugo Lloris and the backup Joe Hart that you've got to replace at some point. You seem to think that Lloris is probably on his way out.
I think this is his last year. I think the
season.
plans are to keep him. I think it makes perfect sense for him to run his contract out. Same with Joe Hart. They have a replacement already lined up in.
We'll get to that.
Sorry, I mean jump.
Then you've got Serge Aurier at your right back position that you've probably got to replace. Then where did he go? Oh, there, yeah, sorry. Toby Alderweireld, I was already looking for who he wants out. So you need a center back replacement. And then you got Gareth Bale floating in the background who's going back to Madrid. So that's a lot to replace.
Yeah. I think the big thing for Spurs has been improve the defense and replace elsewhere. The guy not on here, our favorite player in the Premier League, Eric Lamela, is going to be moving on to Sevilla as part of a deal. So the name of the game is
not our favorite player.
Is
not my favorite.
I think maybe not Aurier, but Alderweireld. These are players that should have been moved on. I think a year or two ago under Pochettino, they should have been moved on, and they didn't. And now they're having to pay the price. So we're
assuming that Harry Kane is back, peering through all of this.
Yeah.
And Pierluigi Golini loan from Atalanta, or is that going to be a buy deal?
According to Fabrizio Romano, if I'm a big stat guy, but I would not have picked Pierluigi Golini out of the dozens of goalkeepers in Europe as their guy, 26-year-old from Atalanta. I was waiting if it's Bologna or Atalanta.
Atalanta. They score a ton of goals, and therefore they get a lot of pressure put on him.
I think he's going to be a good option. I think it's the loan. It makes a lot of sense. I believe it's an obligation to buy, but it punts the payment down so you can focus on other areas in the squad now, and it means that you can have Lloris kind of. There's less financial pressure on him to start immediately. He could take a year to bed into the squad. He could take a year for it not to be perfect.
Is it a 1-year loan with an option, or is it a 2-year?
1-year loan with an option, I believe. And so I think it makes a lot of sense financial-wise, and I dig the move. I think it's not an exciting one, but I think it works.
It's smart. I mean, it's building down the line. Then Takahiro Tomiyasu from Bologna to replace Aurier.
That's a great name. I think what I like him at right back is he's in the 99th percentile.
It's a ridiculous number.
For clearances and blocks. So he's a very defensive right back. He's not going to be bombing forward, creating chances, being a great overlapping guy. But what often was an issue for Spurs is a lack of balance in their back line with Reguilon, who is not a great balanced fullback. He likes to get forward. He likes to attack. But when you leave almost a back two, and especially if it's Toby Alderweireld, who's not known for his breakneck pace, and if it's Eric Dyer or Davinson Sanchez, there are some question marks there. But what he could do is be a good defensive option at right back. So you have Reguilon able to create, and then him plus Son would be a very, very good left side of attack for you. So it's a good back four option. He could try and do a back five with Doherty because he had a lot of success with him at Wolves, but he gives you a different option. He could play at center back as well. So he's a versatile option, and that one's also rumored to be close to happening. So I think that those are two additions. Again, I wouldn't have picked because they're not exactly going to blow you away with how exciting they are.
Smart moves.
But you need good teams, so I think it's a smart choice.
Then you've got Alderweireld. As we said, he wants out. You've got some combination of that you could fill it with Rodon, Sanchez, Dyer, or you go the dream move for Jules Kounde for $69 million release clause.
Wow, I don't realize. I always think of him with just big afro, not with the dreads. He'd be tremendous. There are rumors that Spurs are interested in paying the price. I believe the release clause around £70 million. That's the reported figure. They're interested in him, but it depends on if Kounde is waiting for someone else that's not Spurs to be interested in him. I think he'd be a tremendous get. He's 5'10", so he's not your dominant center back. Look at Ibrahima Konate. Today made his preseason debut for Liverpool, a gargantuan human. He's a very different player. Very good on the ball, very good at reading the game positionally, tremendous, and very, very young. 22, turns 23 in November. It'd be an expensive one, but he gives you, a decade plus if he stays with you. And very easily can turn him over for a profit because if you wanted to. So it's definitely a very sensible transfer for the price, and I think it'd be a very good building block for them going forward under Nuno.
Last, Marcel Sabitzer to replace Bale. Even though Bale didn't play a lot early on, I think you need consistency on that wing.
Yeah, I think Sabitzer won't necessarily replace him positionally, like for like.
No.
So I think that what he'll offer is a very effective buy. 27 years old, a lot of experience at Salzburg. And I don't want to say he's ready for a move on up, but I think that he's very, very capable.
He seems like he's been around forever.
Yeah, and I think at 27, captain of his club, he's a very capable option in the midfield and offer you a bit more creativity, a bit more flair. Now, that's a spot in the squad where they would like to make replacements, like to make improvements, but there are reports on if that's actually going to happen or not because, again, if you're not selling the man down low, then do you have the money for these? Koundé would take up almost all your budget. And I'm completely forgetting his name, the guy that they're close to being swap with Lamella for.
You mentioned earlier, I can't blank on it also.
It's going to kill me. It's going to kill me. But I think the thing with Sabitzer is that he would be a very smart buy because it fits Spurs, I think. It would be a very good initial get for them. To be looking at. I'm trying to find this. It's
Brian Gill.
Thank you.
That's what we talked about earlier.
So Brian Gill, again, I would not have picked him, but he's a very good dribbler.
He's 19.
He's a good creator. Hasn't created a ton of assists because he plays in an Eibar side that is not the greatest. But reports are £20 million plus Eric Lamella for Brian Gill. So that's a very smart one as well. That could be on the left wing, right wing. He's a versatile option that could, I think. It's tough to replace Bale because I believe he got 11 goals in the Premier League last season, something like that. He got 11 goals.
Those were mostly late because he didn't play a lot in the early part of the season.
But he got only 5.3 XG, scored 11 goals. So the thing with Bale is he did not get a ton of chances, and he scored a lot more than he was expected to. So that means that you need more goals from elsewhere, or this side may look at drying up for goals. And an issue with Nuno's sides last year, when after the injury to Jimenez,
no depth,
the goals dried up. They struggled at scoring. So I think that is an issue that could potentially come up depending on how he sets up his side. It's a surprise for a Harry Kane-led side. But I think that, it's an interesting one. I think that my controversial opinion is that I think Harry Kane plus Laporte plus Gabriel Jesus and £100 million, I think that's what you're aiming for. You get that. You're almost
all
happy.
this stuff doesn't matter.
All your stuff, you can do this and maybe a few other things. And
that's what I'm saying. This becomes an academic exercise.
Yeah, then you're looking at Laporte, and then you're looking at Koundé as a back duo. You've got a lot. You got Jesus up front.
You're immediately reinvigorated, and you're challenging.
Now,
if he can bed them in.
This guy's remove his face. You have Gareth Bale, and you already have the lesson of selling a player for a lot of money and replacing him with the likes of Eric Lamella, who is now moving on almost
goal of the year.
8 years after that move? What was it, 2012? Maybe a bit earlier than that, but 9-10 years after that move, they're still feeling the impacts. They did not replace him properly, and it came back to bite them. So I think it
was the same window that they got Eriksen.
It might have been. I think it's an interesting summer for Spurs, and I think it's going to be a lot of change now. Whether that's guaranteed for success.
And some bad Photoshop. That's not even Photoshop. Those are just heads on bodies.
Yeah, I think Google Slides. It's not. Yeah, there's absolutely no attempt. This neck isn't even close. It's
kind of in line.
That is like if you surgically placed someone's head on top.
It's
of
also the wrong
head.
Skin color, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think they'll forgive us.
All kinds of Frankenstein.
You know what? We'll come back and we'll add
footballers.
We'll add their player edits in the future.
That'll do it for us for our perfect window for Spurs, all hinging on what happens with the magical Harry Kane and where he ends up, if he ends up back in a Spurs shirt heading into the year. We shall see.
Heung-min Son, another interesting option. Do you keep him? Do you maybe move him on as a more replaceable option? At 30 years old, needs a new contract. Maybe move him on as well. There's a lot of questions for Spurs. We don't have the answers. Maybe we have the answers. Anyways,
Let us know what you think in the comments. Ask the questions. Maybe we have answers. Maybe we don't. We probably don't.
Maybe you have answers.
Jack, Conrad, please let us know what you think. This has been the Footy 5. Say something in the comments. Like, subscribe, please. It's free, and sometimes we know what we're talking about. That'll do it for us. Take care.